welcome to H2O Global News' stream series. My name is Darby and I am one of the staff writers here at H2O Global News. In this episode, get ready as we dive into the depths of water innovation with Dr. Paul O'Callaghan, the founder and CEO of BlueTech Research and the pioneering author of The Dynamics of Water Innovation. Paul will be shedding light on the key findings from his groundbreaking book, Unveiling the Water Technology Adoption Model, known as WATA, and discussing its significance in guiding decision-making for innovators and investors within the water sector. Hello, Paul. Thanks for joining today.
Thanks, Darby. Pleasure, and thanks for having me.
Could you just give us a quick overview of BlueTech Research and what your role in the company entails?
Sure. So BlueTech Research is a research organization focused on analysing and studying innovation in the water space. And our mission statement is how we can help increase the efficiency and the use of capital to solve water challenges. And what we mean by that is you've got all this capital that wants to improve the water situation, human capital, financial capital, but there's only so much capital to go around and the challenges are enormous. So if we can do anything to help people make better decisions, to do things quicker, more efficiently, that's our goal as a research organization. And we often, before we prepare anything for our clients, we say the mission is to illuminate, enlighten, distill, make things easy to understand, easy to digest, so people can absorb all of this very dynamic information, which is changing very rapidly. It could be in relation to how to respond to climate change or emerging contaminants or the need to decarbonize, and help them to understand the landscape of the opportunities out there, whether that's an investor, whether that's a utility, a chief technology officer within tech company, or an entrepreneur.
Lovely. And in your book, The Dynamics of Water Innovation, could you give us a quick overview of your key findings and insights and how it addresses the perception of the water sector being maybe a bit slow to adopt innovation?
Yeah, so I heard this for many, many years, that the water sector was slow to adopt innovation. I'm sure many of your listeners have heard this too. And that is somewhat true, but I had studied so many water technology startups and new technologies that some were still doing the same thing after 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And I was thinking, that's too slow. Like, you can get through this faster than that. You can get through your piloting in 2 or 3 years. You can get your first full-scale demos in 3 to 5 years. So the idea was, let's put some numbers on this so that people can say it has this pace at which it moves, but let's quantify that. And we found that it can take 12 to 16 years from when you take an idea out of a laboratory, when you're at advanced research and development, to when it's a mainstream technology with hundreds, if not thousands, of reference units out there. But the key thing is this was set up as a goal or a target. Like the Guinness Book of World Records, once someone sets the record for skipathons or freediving or whatever it is, it's there to be broken. So we said, hey, look, this is the envelope. And we found that crisis-driven innovation could actually have the time of that. So it was really to, for once, take what perhaps people had been saying, but not to use it as an excuse. Because that's the danger with this, that we can say, oh, but it takes so long and it takes forever. It doesn't take forever. There are reasonable timelines here. And what we do is we study velocity. And it's like an airplane taking off. Look, if the airplane hasn't reached cruising altitude and they said, take off your safety belts, you can walk around now, after about 20 minutes, you should be a bit worried. And we think that if a company hasn't managed to get through these stages within a reasonable time frame, there's something holding them back, and we need to figure out what is that, and then try and unpack that and help them move forward.
That's a really great example for the listeners to visualize it a bit more, the ones that don't know the sector too much. So thanks for that. And also the book introduces this water technology adoption model. So could you just explain how this model was developed and its significance in guiding decision making for, let's say, innovators and investors in the water sector?
Sure. So in my career, I had seen something like a membrane bioreactor, an MBR, go from something that was talked about in hushed tones and whispers when I was just doing my master's project in water. No one knew what one was. It had just been launched. And within 10 years, that was a mainstream technology. So when I kept hearing about these adoption rates, I always remembered MBR. So I went back to the founder of Xenon, Andrew Benedict, and said, Andrew, can you help me? How long did it take you to get your first plants off the ground? And Andrew was very generous. He shared all the data with me and we plotted and we analyzed it. And then I went to the founders of about 5 or 6 other hugely successful now water technology companies, and they were all very willing to share the data with me. Hank van der Laan of Trojan UV, James L. Barnard, who co-invented biological phosphorus removal, and many others. That was where we got the data from. Then we had empirical data to build a model, and then we played with that a lot, stress tested the model, came up with something that we felt stood up and was replicable. And like all models, it's useful as long as it's useful. And then if something else comes along, we'll update or replace it. And for the people that we hope to use it, one of the fascinating things about my work in water is that I work with water utilities. I work with leading corporations like Pepsi-Cola, Apple, Microsoft, Unilever, P&G, also with investors, venture capital investors, really enthusiastic entrepreneurs and leading solutions providers. Every one of those people is looking for something slightly different. So we wrote the book from the perspective of each of those to have a common framework, because I found people were almost talking different languages. Like if you're a utility right now, you may be thinking, okay, I need to reduce my leakage rates, get them down to 10%. Maybe I've got CSO overfall events. My network needs upgrading. I'm worried about emerging contaminants. I've got to decarbonize. I want to maybe reduce energy use, reduce chemical usage, and I've got an aging workforce. So that's where the utility may be coming from. An entrepreneur thinks, I've got the next best thing since sliced bread, and everyone should just buy it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the situation. You've got to figure out what problem are you solving for who, and that led us down to breaking down innovation to different types. Venture capital investor, they like disruptive innovation. They want something that's like a Tesla.
Yeah.
That's what we call discontinuous innovation. It's a complete break. It is like a car. It gets you from A to B, it gets you to school and back, but fundamentally everything else about it is different underneath the hood. And in water, we see ceramic membranes, for example, a good case in point. They filter water, but they do it differently. So understanding that is the perfect technology for a new entrant, because they're not trying to compete with the mainstream membrane area. They're coming with something completely different. The same would be true of UV LED. So by understanding the different types of innovation and the perspective of an investor compared to a utility, a corporate, a large solution provider, we finally have something, I hope, that makes the conversations productive and useful, rather than the enthusiasm that's there and the desire to innovate, but people kind of almost missing each other in that conversation.
The WATA model, it benefits water innovators in planning and tracking developments. Maybe you have a particular case study that you found when you were writing the book, or you found during your time working for the company.
Yeah, so we looked historically at technologies which we could look back in the past to get some ideas of what we could expect in the future. The ones that we were excited about to look at were membrane bioreactors, ultraviolet disinfection, UASB, too many to list really, but the upcoming ones I think that are fascinating for me would be ceramic membranes, UV LED. They do the same thing. They disinfect water, they filter water, but they do it in a new way. And I think by helping people to understand where they sit in that framework, they can decide, oh, actually, that's actually a good market for us because we're in this already, or maybe that's a good market for a new entrant or for an investor. I was fascinated with a thing called sponge cities. So sponge cities are a response to climate change, where you hold water using blue-green infrastructure, nature-based solutions. And I got to visit one in China. with Kangji, and I was explaining to him about the work that I had done in the book and studying adoption rates. And he said, that's really interesting. He said, it took me 10 years to get my first sponge city off the ground.
Wow.
I said, oh, yeah. And then he said, but there was a flood that happened in Beijing in 2014. And after that flood, the adoption rate completely spiked because the government became very aware of the crisis. And as a result of that, they changed policy. And as a result of that, suddenly it just took off. And I thought, it's incredible that the same pattern that we've seen in many technology areas applies to something like blue-green infrastructure or nature-based solutions. So, and that's a very contemporary one because utilities and countries all over the world are facing those types of challenges right now.
Absolutely. I mean, flooding is a major issue, and we need to adopt certain innovations because we can't just push it under the rug because it's only going to get worse. So sponge cities sound great.
Yeah, they really work, and they really do. They're amazing. They create beautiful habitats as well. You can eat fruit from trees when you're walking through them. And what we're finding is they might be called something different somewhere else. Like, for example, just outside of Manchester, Severn Trent Water are working on one in Mansfield. Hamburg in Germany are working on a similar concept. They're daylighting rivers in New York. In Copenhagen, they call this cloud burst is their word, or you'll hear the term blue belts used in Staten Island. So, but fundamentally, it's a very similar idea of how we're going to deal with too much water at certain times.
Yeah, amazing. And the book emphasizes the importance of understanding the journey of water technology innovation. And what do you see as the common pitfalls that innovators often face? And how can a better understanding of this journey help them navigate through these certain challenges?
An excellent question. That's really the heart of why we chose to write this book, and the reason for it, because for many entrepreneurs, they only go through this type of journey once when they're creating a new technology. I can speak to it from the perspective of the entrepreneur or the innovator who's trying to get that new idea out there and into the world and have it impacting. Understanding it means that their first 3 customers will be very different than the next 20 customers, and those 20 customers will be very different from the next 100. So you have the innovators, they'll almost develop it with you. Okay, these are the type of utilities or corporations, like, for example, I can think of Clean Water Services in Portland, Oregon. They helped develop Struvite recovery with a company called Ostara. Like, they're in there right at the very, very start. Pepsi Cola are co-developing solutions with groups like NX Filtration and coming up with ideas themselves. They're the innovators. Mm-hmm. Now, when you're working something new, you try and identify that as your very first type of customer. Then you move into the early adopters. They're willing to go ahead. They'll accept that maybe there's still a few improvements to be made, iron out a few kinks. And then after that, it's got to be really ready for prime time and easy to deploy, reliable, robust. And that's the next sector. And oftentimes companies can be very good at getting the first 3 clients, and then they struggle maybe to figure out how do they get the next 25 or 30 and scale beyond that. So that's one thing that we emphasize in that journey is, I think, from a utility perspective also, understanding where the utility sits. Like, do you want to co-develop? Maybe you do. If you've got a really acute problem with how to remove a contaminant from your water or deal with an acute event like stormwater or flooding or CSOs, other times you might want to adopt sustaining innovation to make everything last a little bit longer, run a little bit more efficiently. So, in our company, we use MBTI profiles to understand personality types. I think there are personality types here at every step of the way. Same for investors. So helping people to have a framework to say, yeah, actually, I sit here, that technology sits there, to understand the matches better. That was one of the goals.
In one of the press releases that Blue Tech Research has published, spoke about the global water crisis, which we know is ongoing. We always talk about the global water crisis, and it specifically focused on the driving force for development and scaling water technologies. Now, how does the book address the urgent need for water innovation in the face of challenges that we're seeing today, population growth, industrialization, and of course, the big one, climate change.
Yeah, like when you look at all those challenges you just listed, you can absolutely see it's a tremendous opportunity, really, for people to bring these new ideas forward. In the final chapter of the book, we took a look forward at what the future holds, and a lot of the really exciting stuff is at a systems level. It's not about any one technology, it's more about a complete shift. For example, if we could get to a point where you only leak 10% of the water globally, if wastewater treatment plants become energy positive, if our cities embrace blue-green infrastructure but combine that with digital and Earth observation science, if we go towards being able to reuse water more efficiently, both in industrial settings and municipal settings, and indeed drive down household use as well to as low as 50 litres per person per day, everything I mentioned there can lead to more than a one order of magnitude improvement in terms of water consumption, resilience to too much water, as well as dealing with water quality issues. Underneath that is where the technologies sit. So like, for example, people may have heard of a membrane aerated biofilm reactor, an MABR, or an NMBR. Those allow you to go towards energy neutrality, satellite-based leak detection, or better use of data to find leaks. That allows you to get down to 10%, but the exciting stuff happens at that top level. And that's what we're seeing. It's a desire to become net positive in terms of energy, neutral in terms of water, resilient in terms of climate, and a deep desire on behalf of the public to see an improvement in water quality. And that's really important, because if you get the public driving and demanding this, I think that's one of the challenges right now, is we need to harness public opinion in a positive way, that they want an improvement, as opposed to just being disappointed with what they perceive to be happening, which is understandable given the, when you see pollution events happening. So the exciting stuff, I think, is at the systems level. Once you understand that change and where we're heading to, and then you track the change, you go, oh, we're not starting from zero. There's like about 40 or 50 cities already that leak under 10%, about 8 or 9 that we see in America, a number in Japan and Southeast Asia, a number in Europe. We see a number of energy neutral wastewater treatment plants as well. So we're not starting from zero with these systems level shifts by any means.
And that same press release also mentions 10 areas of anticipated growth within water innovation over the next decade. Now, could you share some insights into these areas and how they contribute to shaping a more sustainable water future?
Yeah, we've mapped these top 10 areas, Darby, that we believe are the next key areas of opportunity for innovation and value creation in water for the next 10 years or so. And they include emerging contaminants, energy neutrality, closing the loop in industrial water cycles, digital innovations, reducing household water use, and including SDG 6 and better access for water for the 800 million people that don't have access to water, and maybe up to 2 billion that don't have access to safe water. And all of these represent key areas of opportunity that are enabled by advances in material sciences, digital technologies, new business models, better collaboration models between public and private sector, for example, where we see Microsoft partnering with a small tech startup called Fido, not so small anymore, but they're growing, but initiating projects with Thames Water and Denver, Colorado. So the exciting things are happening across those 10 areas we've identified, enabled by advances in science and tech, business model innovation, and I would say partnering, and better innovation in policy and regulation too is key.